Okay, welcome back to a brand new tutorial. Basically, in this tutorial, we'll be going through some of the array method that will be used in LeetCode. And basically, what LeetCode means is that you need LeetCode to solve problems, especially real life problems. So, for example, if you are given an array of a bunch of random alphabets and your boss just wants you to change all the first letter to caps, right? So how do you do that? Technically, you could chat GPT it, but the more efficient way is to have some kind of knowledge and algorithms for you to make some functions. So in this video, we will be going through how arrays, basically you will be learning some of the array methods. This is basically like my cookbook, so you will see how things goes. Let's get to the first one. So the first one, we have set our core to 1 2 3 4 5. Push basically means that it pushes the first number inside. So let me just highlight everything. So the first one, console.log core, let's node array. Oops. So as you can see, it returns 1 2 3 4 5 and 2. How array works, it basically is acting like a basket. So you can put stuff in the basket, but it will only appear in the last one. And if you take things out from the basket, it's gonna be pop. So let's see what if we do pop. It should look 1 2 3 4. So this is basically pop. Basically it just takes the 5 out of the basket. And then there is one more. It's called the console.log core.length. So the core.length in this case, guess what it should be. I'm thinking it's 5. Let's check it out if it's 5. It is, right? So basically that is the basic concept of arrays, and let's now get something deeper. Alright, so what if you have an alphabet of denied, right? So now you have an alphabet of denied, and let's learn some kind of ways we can go with it. The first one is definitely converting this string into array. So why do we do this? Basically, if you are given some questions to rearrange a string of letters, you will need to convert it into an array first. So what we're gonna do here is that we will convert into an array. There are two methods, obviously. The first method is what you see right here. We make an array, we copy these alphabets, and we console.log. This will separate every single alphabet into an array. So let's do node array. Does it work? As you can see, this denied has been separated into different strings. And there's another way which is something pretty cool, but usually I think not a lot of people know it. Basically what you can do is you can do an array from, and you can do alphabets. So basically what this does is the same thing, just maybe looks a lot cooler. Some people might prefer this. It looks basically much the same. As you can see over here, it's still denied. So the next thing is gonna be reverse. So if you are needed to find a reverse array, what you can do is you can basically use this formula to make into an array and dot reverse. Because strings are unable to reverse in order, only arrays can. So you technically you have to convert this string into an array, and you do a reverse function. So what this does, basically it just, as you can see, DENIED. Now it becomes DEINED. It just go in reverse. But if you are just doing alphabets dot reverse, it doesn't work because it's just a string. right? Let's try it out. Yep, it doesn't work. So basically that's how we do it. Let's continue. This is the one that we learn. Okay, so the next one is gonna be index of. So what this does, basically it gets the index of a certain alphabet in a string. So in this case, assuming that we have converted alphabets into an array, and the index of E, basically we find the first index of E, and we will console log this E index. So DENIED, what is the first E? It's gonna be 2. So let's find out. Oh, no, not really 2. It's gonna be 1 because D is 0 and E is 1. As you can see, it's over here, 1. And that's the index of formula. Let's get to the next one, last index of E. So what this does is basically we are converting these alphabets into an array, and we will find out the last index of E. So what is the last index of E? DENIED. We are not taking the first. Index of is the first E. Last index of is gonna be the last E. So it's gonna be DENIE, the last E that we see. So it's gonna be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's gonna be the index of 4. Let's find out if it's true. As you can see, it's 4. Okay, let's get to the next one. The next one is gonna be includes. Okay, so what this does, basically we convert into an array again, and we will find if it includes D. So if it does includes, it's gonna be a true, and if it doesn't include, it's gonna be a false. So let's find out if D exists in this array. This is true because we do have D. What if we change this to Y? It should return us false. Let's find out. Right, great. So the next thing, let's get to the next case. Sort. So what is sort? Sort, basically, we can only sort arrays. We are unable to sort any alphabets. So as you can see, this is an array.js, but definitely we are gonna learn other stuff like map and hash maps and set later on, right? So let's get to the basic formula of sort. So what sort does, basically it find out what is all your alphabets, and it returns sorts from lowest to the highest. So A is your lowest and your Z is gonna be your highest. Let's find out. So as you can see over here, DDEEIN, it just goes by ascending order and is in alphabet ascending order. So that's basically much it. Okay, let's get to the next one. The next one is gonna be array from alphabet.sort. I can't recall what this actually means, but let's find out. I guess it's the same thing. It's just asking you whether you want to do it from an ascending sort or descending sort. So I guess if we do A, and this one we change it to B dot local compare, it should give us a reverse sort. Yeah, that's basically much it. You want to use this if you are planning to do a reverse sort, or you can do a dot reverse. It's probably the same thing. So to make it less complicated. Okay, let's get to the next one. The next one is gonna be map. So what this does is basically we convert the alphabets into an array, and then we map it, and then we find out, we get all the elements that has D. If the element has D, we change it to X. Else we return the same thing, and we join the element. So let's not do the join first. we'll do the join later. Let's see what this does. It should return us X ENIEX. Yeah, as you can see over here. So what this means is basically we are doing a map function. If you do not know what is map, you can always refer to the previous video that I made for map and for each. So what this does is basically it changes the DENIED and it changes all the D. As you can see, the map function, if we are trying to look for element that is equals to D. A question mark meaning that if it's true, then we will continue. So D is true, so we'll continue, we'll replace it with X. And if it's not true, we will let it be the same. So what this does is that it loops, it do a for loop. So to simplify even further, it do a for loop in this denied array, and whenever we see a D, we replace it with an X. So the next one is gonna be E. E is not D, so we remain it. The else statement is it remain the same, and we do the whole loop until it returns all the D, and we convert everything. So how do we change this array into a string? We can basically just do a dot join, and we just do an empty, just do a string inside. So basically what this does is basically it will join everything from the array. Now it should return us a string. And that's basically much it for array. And the next one we're gonna go into a special case array. So maybe just take some time to say a bit. Basically you need to know all these because LeetCode is LeetCode, right? You need to know basically all the sort functions so that in the real life situation you know how to deal with all these use cases. So let's get to the next one. Special case array. So in case we have two different alphabets and it's in a string, so maybe there might be some interns that doesn't know how to do proper data structuring, and if they happen to return you things like this, what you can do is you can convert into an array. That's basically much it. If your backend doesn't return you the correct thing, your front end you can still do it, right? So in case your backend returns you deny and confusion and you want to convert it into an array, what we can do is we can do a split function. So the split function basically converts into an array. Let's not do the map first. Okay. Node array. So as you can see, it actually splits it into two parts and it converts this thing into an array. So that's basically the split function. Let's get the map function. So what this does is basically it's the same thing, only the map only exists if there is an array, and map is able to like do things in every single element. So what this map does is basically it trims all the spacing from the front and the back. Just remember the trim only removes all the spacing from the front and the back, right? So it removes all this spacing. So the confusion is gonna be no spacing on the front. Let's find out if it's true. As you can see, the confusion, it just covers up the gap, and that's basically how you do special case array. Okay, let's get to the next one. The next one is gonna be strings. There's still a bit stuff to go through, so hopefully this tutorial we can cover most of the stuff. Okay, let's get to the next one. The strings are only array. So just take note that our alphabet is still denied, and now we are doing a string only conversion. So let's get to the first one. So let me just move this at the bottom, okay, to prevent any more confusion. So the first thing is that we have an alphabet denied, and what we will plan to do is we'll be planning to replace the first D into X. So if you do a replace function, it just replaces the first D to X, and let's see if you replace the X, it should return us XENIED. Let's find out if it's true. As you can see, XENIED does not replace the final D. you thought that it replaced all, and there's actually a function that replaces all of them, which is the replace all function. So the replace all function, what it does is basically replace all the d to x, and now it should return us xen iex, because it replaces all the d. That's basically much it. Let's get to the next one. Reject is a bit complicated, but it will be cool if you know some of the rejects. Let's not get too deep into this rule, and let's get to the actual local stuff that we do it. The first one is going to be replace. So we can do a alphabets dot replace something else into something else. So rejects is just basically this whole thing. This is just basically rejects. And in this case, what we are doing is basically we are looking for any alphabets with a D. And G basically means that we are looking globally. So it's basically the same thing as replace all, but in rejects formula. This is your search. So we are searching for D. We are doing a global, and what I does basically it ignores case sensitivity. So whether it's capital D or small letter d, we will still change it to T. So what this does, basically it should return us TENIET, because you have to replace all the T into D. This might sound a bit complex, but maybe you'll get used to it in the future. So we should get TENIET. So the first thing, we have rule out. Let's get to the second one. The second one is gonna be alphabets dot replace D to E, GI. So in rejects, you can actually do range lookup, A to Z, D to E, D to F, etc., etc. And you can even do numbers. So what this does, basically it just looks for all the D and E. Globally, ignoring the insensitivity, and we'll replace it with S. So what this does is that we are converting all the D and E to S. So now what we should return is we should get SSN ISD. I'm not sure if I'm correct, let's find out. SSN ISS. So because the last two is E and D. So maybe you might be a bit confused. Let's just get a bit straighter to it, to explain even further what rejects is. So the first thing is that rejects has these two things. This is the starting and ending point of rejects, and the center point is the one that we are searching, the things we are searching for. So we can put a square bracket, and this is the things we are searching for, and we can put any alphabets inside. You can put a string, or you cannot put a string, it doesn't matter. So for example, if you are looking for A to Z, we can do this. If you are looking for D to E, we can put this, right? I just put a string because I don't want to confuse people, and I want to make it straightforward and easy, so I put a string. And there is actually another thing, but we'll discuss later. So that after you know that this is rejects, anything that comes out from the slash is a declaration. So what this means is that if you are declaring a G, meaning that you are saying that you are trying to replace all. If you do not do a G, it just replaces the first D and E, right? So you can do a G, and the I is basically saying that you will plan to ignore all the D and E, regardless of alphabet or small letter. So any alphabet is gonna be replaced. And then the last thing is gonna be your comma and whatever string is at the back. Basically, it's like I want to replace it with what. So I hope I did not confuse my instruction, but let's get a bit more practical, right? So as you can see, currently we are returning SSN ISS, right? But what if I remove the G? Now I'm only left with I, right? So now it should return me the first D and E. My first D and E will only change to S. Don't believe it? Let's find out. As you can see, only the first S is changed. Because it's not global. If I put a G, it's gonna be global. So what this does is that it search from the first to the end, and it search the first thing. Does it match D and E? If it match D and E, we'll replace the first string with S. So SENIED. The initial is DENIED. We replace the D to S. Right, that's G. What about I? I meaning that it ignores all the case sensitivity. So even if I put this D to E in alphabet letter, it will still replace it. As you can see, SSNISS, it still replace everything. So what if I do not have the I? It shouldn't change anything. As you can see, it remains. So that's basically the G and I, how they work together. Okay, and let's get to the next one. Hopefully that clears up some thoughts. The next one is gonna be replace all. Okay. So what this does, it's actually the total opposite of what you have learned previously. What this does is basically it, instead of includes, it excludes, right? So it's the opposite of D to E, as we can see previously. So this icon, meaning that I would replace everything besides D to E. That's basically much it, right? This is like the opposite of this. So excluding, replace excluding this to this. So let's see, for example, in this alphabet, DENIED, we will replace everything except for D and E. So DENIED, it will loop through the first thing, D. Okay, is D, are we replacing D? No, because we are excluding it. Are we replacing E? We are excluding it. N, is N D to E? No. So we will replace it. I, we will replace it. E, no, we will not, because we are excluding this. D, we are excluding this as well. So it should return us DEXXED. Let's find out if I'm right. DELLED. Yeah, replacing it with L. So we will replace everything besides D and E. That's basically the special icon means, right? Okay, let's get to the next one. Now let's get to the special case. If our alphabet is a capital D, ENIED 1, 2, 3, and we are planning to replace everything except D to E and 1, 2, 3. So what does this mean? This basically means that we are replacing everything to X, excluding D to E and 1, 2, 3. And don't forget that this I exists. So we are just basically ignoring all the case sensitivity. This will be ignored, this will be ignored, and etc. etc. So the first DE is excluding, so we will not change. NI, we will change it to X, because NI is excluding from D to E and 1, 2, 3. ED, this is we are not replacing this, because again we are excluding it. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, we are excluding 1, 2, 3, so we will not change. So we will be changing only N and I. And this symbol is quite powerful. Let's find out. DEXXED123, and that's basically how you do replace. Let's see another example. Right. Alphabet X dot replace 123 D to E is the same thing. So what would be your answer? Okay, you can pause this video and you can answer it. Okay, let's find out the answer. XXNIXXXY, because it's the same thing, we are including this. So we are including 123 D to E, thus we are only not doing N and I. So N and I will be here. Basically it's the total opposite of what we did previously. Okay, so that's basically the special case has been completed. Let's get to match on rejects. So the previous rejects we have already went through, and now we are getting to the match of rejects, which this is definitely something, and there is a real life example you can see in a very short while. So another day I've been finding out the a return response, and my return response basically is a string. So if my return response is a string, how am I going to convert this string into something that what I wanted? As you can see, I have called the backend, and the backend returns me this from some kind of database. As you can see, there is a Solana. Okay, if you have used crypto, that's great, because crypto is the future. That's what I believe. After Solana is gonna be an address. After an address, there's a question mark. It's gonna be an amount. After the amount, it's gonna be a label. After the label, it's gonna be some kind of junky message. So the question is, please find the Solana address and amount. And what this means is that we are trying to find this whole entire address, and we are trying to find this amount. How are we gonna do it? And this is where the match rejects comes in. Let's find out how match rejects actually works. First, we will be converting our actual thing into a string, right? And what we are gonna do next is gonna be quite straightforward. We are gonna do x.match, and we will do this and plus. So it might sound very confusing, but do not worry. What this does is basically we are looking for, right? Match and replace is completely different thing, but rejects is the thing that we are looking for. So for example, replace, as we can see just now, anything that is inside the square bracket is the things we are looking for. Anything outside is gonna be another kind of logic. So I want to ask, what is this? What is this that we are looking for? It might sound very, very foreign to you, but try this out. Okay, so what we are trying to find, we are trying to find anything that is amount equals. So what this does basically, we are storing all these matches into a function. It might sound confusing, but I will try my best to explain what it means, right? So let's console log first and find out what is this. Okay, so as you can see, we are getting a few things in our array. The first thing, we got this. The second thing, we got this. The third thing, we got this. The fourth thing, we got this. And the fifth thing, we got this. So you might be confusing, hey, what are you trying to do? Why is there so many informations that is given? And I would answer that match, what rejects match does is basically we are converting something into a array. So the first thing we see right here is that we are looking for a few things. We are looking for amount equals, and we are looking for anything that is after amount 0 to 9. As you can see, anything after, we will put a bracket, and 0 to 9, and dot, meaning that anything that has a dot, we will include it as well, and plus meaning that we are finding everything after that string until it stops. So this will return us the first array. Let's look at the string. If we are looking for amount, the amount is right here, and after amount, is there any 0 to 9? After amount, yes, there is 0 to 9. And after all this 0 to 9, is there any dots? Yes, there is a dot as well. So we'll include the whole chunk. This is basically our first array that is stored into our function. As you can see, this is the first ever index, also known as index 0. So this is the thing. Basically, the whole thing is what is inside, right? What is inside slash slash. So anything blah 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 inside slash slash, this chunk is gonna be stored into our index 0. Okay. So what is stored after our index 0 is gonna be our bracket. So the first thing we know is we have already stored this, and how do we separate it into a different group? We'll use a bracket. This bracket basically, it separates the first ever string into a second index. So anything that is inside the bracket, so 0 to 9, anything that is inside the bracket, so anything is inside here, inside the bracket, 0 to 9 and full stop. So after amount, we'll get this. If this has 0 to 9 and full stop, we will store everything into the second index. So it has been stored. And this plus sign, meaning that we will include everything that is inside. What if we remove the plus sign? It's gonna only store the first ever digit. So in this case, we will be only storing 0. So we will have to include the plus, so that we'll include everything that has 0 to 9 and dot. It definitely sounds very intimidating at first until you actually try it out, which I highly recommend you to try it out. And that's basically much it. The second thing is gonna be the index. Basically, it just counts how long is your original string. How long is X? This will be placed in the index of 2. The third index is gonna be your input, is basically your entire string. And the fourth index is gonna be very complicated, and I don't want to cover it. So I will cover until the third index. And how do you actually get your amounts? So in this case, after I've done this, I have gotten four different index. How are we gonna get the actual amount? Let me just note array again. So I want to get this amount. How do we do it? I'll give you a few time to think about it, or you can pause the video and think about it. Okay, let's find out how do we get it. So how do we get it is that we will just get the index inside. So in this case, if you are looking for index 0, we'll put 0 here. in this case we are looking for index 1, so we'll do index 1, and this is how you find the value. And that's basically how match regex works in a real life situation. Okay, let's move on to the next stuff. We are about to finish, and hopefully you can learn something else. Let's try not to confuse anybody, and let's just bring the thing to the bottom. Okay, I think this you have seen it 100 times, so these two I will not go through. Basically you just convert it to caps or non-caps, and that's it. And we have already covered this in one of the lessons. So let's get to the next one. This is a bit typical. So what this does is it's the same thing. We are just converting the first ever index of the string into capital letter, and we will add anything afterwards from 1. So basically, if this doesn't exist, let's do this first. We are basically just taking the first character and convert it into a uppercase. And what this does, the slice method, is basically we are just getting anything from index 1 all the way to the end. So the second thing is going to be ENIED. Okay, so that's how slice works. And if you combine them together, we will get the whole entire string that has gotten the first alphabet to change. Okay, let's get to the next one. The starts with formula. So alphabet starts with DE. What should this return? It should return anything that is after DE. Let's find out. Oh, I'm sorry. It's just so starts with is basically just a formula to find if this string has something with D and E. Does it start with D or does it start with D and E? If it is true, we will mark it as true. It's gonna be a Boolean response. What if I change it to ED? It should return me false. And why? Because it does not start with E and D, so it returns me false. Okay, the next thing is gonna be the opposite. It's gonna be ends with. Just take note of the S. So does it ends with DED? If it's true, we will mark it yes. If it's false, we mark it no. Does it? Okay, the answer is it does. Okay, so if we change it to EF, does it end with EF? Definitely not, so it's gonna return us false. Okay, let's get to the final thing. I think substring I will not cover, but basically substring is an old JavaScript, and I don't want to cover it, so I'll just remove it. Okay, let's get to the next one. Slice. So what is slice? It's a bit confusing at first, but let's get to it. What if it's slice 0? I'll give you a few seconds to answer. Okay, so as you can see just now from this equation, if it's slice 1, we will take the first index and we will finish everything at the back. So slice 0, basically it will return us the same exact thing. Denied. Okay, cool. What if you have a tree at the back? So what this does is something extreme that you have to memorize, and what this does is meaning that anything you see at the back, you have to remove 1. I do not know there is a JavaScript syntax error or it's just some programming error, but you should be reducing the 3 to 2. Just keep this in mind. So if 3 turns to 2, we will be returning 0 to index 2. So 0, 1, 2. It should return us DEN. Just take note. Okay, let's find out if it's true. It is true. Always remove 1 at the back for slice formula. Okay, cool. Let's find out the next one. What if it's a reverse? What if it's a -3 and -1? What do we do? Right? So let's do not panic first. Let's just find out what is slice -3. Okay. Okay, so what this means is that we will count from the back. So 1, 2, 3. It's gonna be IED. Alright? Okay, but what if it's -1? What does this return? So it's the same exact logic. We will reduce this -1 to -2. Why? Because -1, -1 is -2. Always reduce the second input and reduce it by 1. So this is gonna be -3 index all the way to -2 index. So -3 index 1, 2, 3 is gonna be I to -2 index E. It's gonna return us I and E. Let's find out if it's true. It's true. Okay, just take note, always remove this by 1. Okay, and these two, I think it's pretty damn straightforward, right? You can try these two. I'll give you a few seconds to try. You can pause the video if you want to. Okay, let's find out the answer. Okay, that's basically much it, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. And the next video we will be covering more on some set and hash maps. Thank you for watching, and see you around.